Hello, everyone. It's Jaden for Student Pages. Hope you're all doing absolutely brilliant once again. Today we have another awesome guest for you guys. We are here with Corin Nemec. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm on my only my first cup of coffee so far, but by the end of this, I'll be in top shape.
Yeah, so Corin, you're best known for the Stargate franchise as Jonas Quinn. Obviously, an incredible franchise spanning over 4 decades, which is crazy, Not many, franchises make it that far. So, what does it mean to you to be part of such a prestigious and loved franchise? And yeah, what do you think to the fan base to this day as well? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that being a part of the franchise is very surprising to me. Actually, I was clueless on just how incredibly passionate the science fiction fans are. And I also had no idea about all of these conventions that they have all over the world, sci-fi conventions, collector conventions, and all of these kind of things. And being on Stargate, even though I was only on for a shorter amount of time than expected, it was a quality character, and the character was well received, and I got to do some fantastic and memorable episodes. Um, when I found out that there was all these conventions all over the world, and I started getting invited to, all over Europe and the UK and Australia and other, and all over the US and just all these places that I had never been. It was quite an extraordinary discovery that this kind of these kind of events were out there, and I still, I'm still doing them. And now that Stargate has announced a new series that they're going to be doing with Amazon Prime, I think that the overall interest and enthusiasm about Stargate, including past seasons, will ramp up, and they'll probably start airing the shows, the previous seasons episodes in other markets that they haven't shown it in a while. So that's exciting as well. I have no idea what they're doing as far as the cast goes on social media. I've been getting hit up left and right, asking, is Jonas Quinn going to be on the new one? And I can't say that I have a whole lot of faith in that, based on sort of how the character disappeared in the first place. But you never know. I mean, if there's a huge fan push, if there's a lot of people out there who'd really like to see that character back, then anything is possible. Because I certainly would love to have an opportunity to come back to that show, even if it was only for a one episode, guest spot or whatever. I wouldn't even care. It would just be a blast. I had such a great time working on it.
Yeah, it'd be a chance to tie up some loose ends there as well, because I was actually, my next question was going to be about the revival and, the fact that the original creators are coming back. So, yeah, I was going to ask about what are the chances we see you back? Because, hey, there's always a chance you're pulling an Andrew Garfield on me right now, saying it's like, I'm not the werewolf, I'm not
I
coming back,
wish.
when actually, the deal's already secretly penned, I see it. But no, yeah, obviously, I'm sure there's so many fans that would absolutely love to see your character come back. Again, it's like whether they get away down the line and then they ask you, it's like who knows. But again, I can only imagine that'd be awesome to see. So, look, I understand. There was a time in your career that had a massive impact on your life, and I don't want to go into too much detail on it. But you had an accident in 2013 that led to recovery for about, I think it was 2 years, right?
It was, yeah,
So,
roughly. I mean, it was probably two full years to full recovery, but I was, the inpatient stuff was a lot more intrusive on my life than just the outpatient physical rehab that went on. The inpatient stuff went on for over a year, that with I think it was 4 or 5 surgeries and inpatient physical rehab, meaning I was basically living at the hospital for half a year. um,
yeah.
and uh, and it was a lot, man. It was pretty heavy. I just was so thankful that that I didn't die in that boat wreck, and had my corpse brought back from Belize instead of my broken bones. I'd much rather bring back some broken bones than not know what happened.
Hey,
So
no, of course. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
how did that happening? Have you had to make any decisions regarding roles that you take on now and productions that you decide to take part in? Has it had any impact of that, or are you still as open as you would say you always were?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. That was one of those situations where even though the production should have been more cautious about things, we were traveling out to a work site on a Belizean Coast Guard boat. So you would assume that that's a very safe boat to be on. Unfortunately, it was, at least it was unknown to me that the boat had been stripped down, because that's what they do down there. They take anything that can be sold on it that they don't think that they really need, and they sell it, like the searchlight and the radar and the sonar and other things that are very important when you're
Dangerous
traveling
game,
at
isn't it?
nighttime and in the ocean. So the boat, the boat traveling at a very high rate of speed crashed into a shipwreck, which is a very well-known dive site, and it's very well known by locals and by a lot of people who are out on the water on a regular basis. And it's a tourist attraction. So it really, these guys, it never should have happened. Really, it was a total peculiarity. I don't know, but I did learn later that the Belizean Coast Guard only pays about 10 US dollars a day. So they don't get the
Wow.
most well-trained boatsmen, and unfortunately for me.
Yeah, that's rough. Honestly, you would really think again that more precautions would be taken in those cases, but it's like if they're stripping out the boat and stuff, guys, it's just anything for money, isn't it? Like that's yeah, that's really
Yeah.
blindsiding to hear, actually.
Yeah, it'd be like if the cops in London like stripped their cars of lights and sirens and radios and their
You've just got a car left, haven't
yeah,
you? You know.
yeah.
No, no, that's ridiculous. But I mean, hey, you've shown no signs of slowing down. That's the good thing. With you were recently in a film called I Feel Fine. That follows a high school teen, going through some pretty difficult times with thoughts of suicide, things like that. You played Donnie Taylor in that. How did you feel about that role specifically? Were there any similarities between yourself and the character? And yeah, if you could just give a bit more of an insight
Yeah, man.
on that project.
I Feel Fine was probably one of the most tragic films I've worked on in some times, in terms of the content of it and the storyline. And it was myself having a son who was similar in age as the character when we were filming that. The idea of losing your young, teenage son to suicide is, or any of your kids, son or not, son, daughter, whatever, husband, wife, mother, father, best friend. It kind of doesn't matter. It's just such a tragic and confusing event to have to figure your way through. And it was extremely emotional to shoot that, just because I couldn't imagine having to go through that in real life. It like really was kind of a nauseating experience. The film itself was, for such a small film, in terms of the budget and all of that, it was pulled off very well. It was, just such an incredible small film to be a part of, that had a big impact. And it's well worth watching if anybody can find it out there. I Feel Fine. And around that same time, another film I did called Place of Bones came out, which is with
Mm.
Heather Graham and Tom Hopper. And it's a thriller that takes place in the Wild West, and it is a phenomenal film. I can never pronounce his name correctly, but the cinematographer who did a lot of Quentin Tarantino's early films shot it, and it was extremely well
Oh wow.
directed. Wonderful film, Place of Bones. I'd highly recommend that. And and also around that same time, a film that I wrote and produced and acted in called Deadly Justice came out, which actually just got picked up at Amazon Prime UK, and it
Oh, awesome.
only in the last month or so. So that's called Deadly Justice, if anybody wants to to watch that and then see what my writing is like. I've written quite a number of films. A more recent one also that came out of maybe 2 years ago was called Dead Man's Hand with Cole Hauser and Stephen Dorff and Jack Kilmer, who was Val Kilmer's son. And that was a Western that I adapted from a graphic novel. But when you're talking about, I'm glad that I'm mentioning all this, and I got a whole bunch of other films coming out. But I'm glad I'm mentioning this because you were going to ask kind of advice and things like this towards students who are trying to get in the industry, and it's advice that I got from a teacher I studied with for a very long time named Manu Tupou at the American Repertory Company in Hollywood. And uh, the one thing that if you want to be an actor, you have to study acting. You got to be in a workshop. You got to be in a theater company. You got to be in an acting class. Whatever it is, you really need to study it and get loose and get friendly with the art of acting and with playing different characters and with challenging yourself before you get challenged, on set with creating characters and whatnot. And also, if you want to be a director, you should study acting as well. I highly recommend that so that you can understand what it is that an actor might be going through it with some of the complexities of certain scene work and stuff that is required, and also learning the way to communicate. Some directors who are a bit more technical will approach directing sort of like, that the actor is just sort of this automaton that they can just make demands of and all of that. And it is the actor's job to live up to the expectations of the director and the writer and producers and all of that. You're certainly on the spot there, but there's also a way of communicating and dealing with an actor that is much more beneficial to the project overall than just making demands or yeah, cut, yeah, why don't you do that again, except just do it better and action, and you know what I mean. It's You're like,
Yeah,
okay.
that's not going to help.
So but and then it's also important to not, as my teacher taught me, Manu, you don't want to be a one-trick pony in the film business and television business. And I started studying with him in my early 20s. I had always studied in an acting class or a workshop for since I was 11 years old when I first started studying acting. And that's how important it was to me, because at that point in my early 20s, I had already been nominated for an Emmy. I'd already starred in a slew of really very successful TV movies and my own TV series, and was going on to do a lot of other projects after that. And but I was still in acting class, so it didn't matter, what film I had just got back from doing, whether it was a big Disney film or Paramount film or the Stephen King miniseries The Stand or anything else. As soon as I got back into town in Hollywood and unpacked my bags, I was back in acting class on Wednesday nights. And that also kept me grounded in what it was why I started acting in the first place. There is I had to go through it myself when I was working on Parker Lewis Can't Lose, in my early teens there. It's a big deal to be the lead character, the title character in a series when you're a young actor, and it can play with your ego a bit. And if I hadn't continued, I was even in acting classes while I was making that series with a different teacher named Larry Moss. But I had to drop out of his class because I was just too busy after season one. And so for season 2 and 3, I wasn't in acting classes at all. And when the show went off the air after season 3, for that year, that 6 to 8 months after it went off the air, I was like, I was in this weird place of like, I should just be getting hired. I should be getting offers. I should be, I was a star on this show, and I was losing touch with why I was acting in the first place. And my good friend Ernie Reyes Jr., fellow actor and a very famous martial artist who I grew up with, he was like, "You got to come check out this acting class I'm in." And so I went and audited the class, and I was like, "This is what I've been missing. This is why I feel like a hollow shell." And so that's very important. And what he taught, circling back around, was that if you're gonna be in the film business, then learn something else besides just acting or just directing or whatever. Like if you're gonna become an actor, learn what it is to be a director. Learn what it is to be a writer. Take even if take other things. Learn makeup, special effects makeup, or makeup artist, or learn what it is to be on the crew. The grip and electric department, and what is it to be wardrobe, set deck, all of these things that if you're in a theater company, sometimes you end up doing some of those things. If it's a small company, if you're not in the particular play you're in, then you're backstage helping to get things wrangled and do other things. But because I hate to say it, not everybody out there is going to make it especially as an actor. The talent pool is huge. The amount of projects that are available are a lot more than there ever used to be, but it doesn't really matter. It's one of the hardest businesses to work consistently in. But if you want to work in the entertainment business, which is a fantastic business to work in, then you kind of spread yourself out, and because you can still go and audition and study acting and do all that while you're working as a prop master, or while you're doing your job in some other facet of the crew or of the world. And that's also looking at what is it to be a producer, what kind of producers. There's a number of different layers of producers on a film. And I also recommend, if you're interested in acting, a lot of people say do background work and all of that. I think that's an okay thing to do for a limited amount of time. But I would recommend probably becoming a production assistant, a PA, even before the background work, because you end up having a lot more access to what's going on behind the scenes as a production assistant.
Mm.
You're in the production office, you're hearing what's going on there. You're talking to the directors, the producers, the writers, all the different departments. You might be a PA for the makeup department, or for the wardrobe department, or whatever. You don't know where you're going to end up. So you can really, really learn a lot more about what's going on a film set as a production assistant than if you're a background artist. Because as a background artist, you're sequestered to one particular area until they need you. Then they bring you out, they stage you, they shoot it, and then they send you back to your prison.
Yeah.
And which is fine. It's okay to kind of get a load of what's going on set. But you don't want to if you want to become a professional actor, you don't want to become a professional background artist. And there are, when I worked in Los Angeles for many years. I live in Florida now, but growing up in the industry out in LA, I actually, from job to job to job, I saw a lot of the same background artists out in LA. And out in LA, if they have a union for background artists there, and they actually get paid. I mean, when inflation wasn't as high as it is now, they actually got paid a living wage. And if they were working, 5, 6 days a week, if they wanted to, if they were working a minimum of 5 days a week on enough productions, then that was all they needed to do for a living. It wasn't, it was definitely a livable wage. And that's what they did that's what their gig was. Professional
Yeah.
background artist. It's a pretty cool job if that's what you're into. So, but as far as the industry itself goes, don't be a one-trick pony. Spread yourself out and learn a number of different um, talents that you can apply to being a professional in the film and television industry, because the arts and entertainment industry is also pretty vast. There's other areas of it that you might not be aware of at this point, that where you can end up even in advertising. It's the commercial space, doing working professionally as in the making of commercials is. If you're known in that area on the crew side or whatever, those pay very well, because they're a very short amount of time that they shoot them in, and these companies put up hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not low millions of dollars for one commercial. And everybody, the pay rate is higher than most films.
Yeah. Hey, no, fantastic insight there, honestly. And you're totally right about, needing to be versatile. Because again, personally, I've obviously nowhere near as much experience. I've not been doing what I do very long. But again, I think just the entertainment and multimedia industry is so huge that you kind of need to dip your fingers in as many categories as you can, realistically, don't you? Like you said, because if you want to get into one thing, it might not be as simple as, okay, let me just plod along into being an actor. It's perhaps not going to happen like that, or as simply or as straight away. You kind of need to just learn all of the tricks in the book, like you said, like get into the background work, that kind of thing, work with directors, producers, consider writing, because then you understand all perspectives as well. Like you say, then when you're on a set, you get where everyone's coming from immediately because it's like, oh, I've been there, done that. I've been there, done that. So yeah, just honestly fantastic response from yourself there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, couldn't
And
couldn't have put it better.
nowadays, on that same note, nowadays, because of modern technology and these phones right here and our ability to create our own content, there's no reason not to get like, a troupe together of folks who are, especially when you're young and you don't have the weighing responsibilities of life that end up happening later on when you don't really have the time to play. Get a group find somebody who wants to be a cinematographer, find somebody who wants to be an editor, find somebody who wants to be a director, find a team of actors, write some, write a series for your, for your phone, and put it out on all the different platforms. And there's this new thing that's happening right now is vertical pictures. It hasn't become very big here in the US or in Europe just yet, but over in Asia, vertical TV series they make
Huge.
millions, huge, 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 huge. I got a good buddy of mine does writes and directs them and stuff. And at first he was like, he thought it was a death sentence. You know what I mean? Because he's a really
Yeah,
talented, but again, it's a tough business, and he's a very talented writer and director. And he got an opportunity to do some of these vertical series for these companies that they release them overseas, over in Asia. And now suddenly he's got his own production company. He's making his own. And then selling them direct to these companies and all that. And he's created a whole new opportunity for himself in the business, and is doing quite well. So the idea behind shooting something vertical, meaning up and down like that, it's a different type of framing. Now, when you're approaching it as a director, you can frame it for horizontal as well, and then crop it in, and just keep
yeah,
everything happening in the center of frame, for the most part. But for a young group of talented actors, whether you're doing a comedy kind of skits, doing skits, or doing something that's a little bit more dramatic and soap operatic, whatever, it is a way to be able to go ahead and start putting your own content out, and laying the groundwork for a future that you may not be aware of. I got some friends of mine over in France who they started doing their own web series called Noob, Noob, and it's basically like what happens inside of a video game. The avatars in the video game are like real people, and they have this real life inside of the video game. And it was very tough for them for the first season or two, but next thing you know, they're getting, for France and the French speaking world, millions of views. And now he
mm,
can self-finance the show, and they're going to all the conventions around France, and they're doing appearances, and they're signing autographs, and they're like famous now, within the gaming community and everything. So these are things that you can actually do in present time as young artists who are trying to get ahead. Don't wait for your agent to call you. Don't wait for your manager to call you. Don't wait. It's just figure out a way to go ahead and do it yourself. And with technology today, you don't need a red camera or one of the expensive Sonys. You need a Canon 5D or 7D, and because you're only streaming in 4D when everything boils down to what you're seeing on television, it's only 4D. So, if you can shoot on these Canon photo body cameras because now they also have remote focus for these photo body cameras, and you can shoot regular cinema with them, or you can do it on your iPhone. That's
I was gonna say
pretty good
a
as
lot of the
well.
new phones have like insanely impressive cameras.
Yeah, it's just the memory space, the storage space that you gotta get the kit right, so that when you're filming it, you can download, you can offload it, to a
Mm.
hard drive. I wouldn't trust the cloud so much either with that much information or data, but yeah, and it's kind of trendy. It's kind of a hip thing if you go and shoot an entire, small film, indie film on your phone. That's something that's marketable. Obviously you got to
Yeah,
be concerned about the sound and all of that, but even sound equipment is far more accessible these days for the independent filmmakers than it was in the past in order to capture really good sound. But those are some of the things that I just recommend. I don't recommend sitting around. If I just sat around and waited for acting jobs and didn't foster my relationships or didn't write and produce some of my own projects and really really put myself out there like that. I wouldn't have done in the last 20 years. I would have done a third of the amount of work that I've done, and I consistently am doing at least 3 or 4 films a year, whether they're independent or whether one of those is like a guest spot on a series or whatever the case may be. If it's something that I wrote and produced myself, I'm consistent. I don't go a year without doing at least 3 or 4 films.
yeah. No, and that's fantastic. Again, it's like I make films with my friends in my spare time. I think we've done 19 of them now. And it's like because if you know the right people, like you said earlier, if you know people that want to get into a certain part of an industry, now's your chance to sort of like give them that opportunity. But there's also, again, there's also a chance that you might introduce something to someone that they didn't know they wanted to do in the first place. Like I've had over 70 of my friends in my films, and none of them really are like trained actors, but some of them have turned out to be like pretty good at it. And
Nice.
it's like you don't know until you try, do you? That's the wonderful thing. I think it's important to sort of, like you said, just give things a go. Whether you've got £1 million at your disposal or just your phone, it's like at the end of the day, anyone can make anything if you put your mind to it.
Yeah, 100%. And with the platforming nowadays, taking it and cutting it into smaller webisodes and all of that, and then putting it on TikTok, putting it on Facebook, putting on X, putting it on Instagram, just putting it out on all of the different platforms. You never know what's going to hit, what's going to pique enough interest to where suddenly it goes viral. And if once it goes viral, then it's over. That you can start actually doing it for real and making enough money to live off of for everybody involved. As wild as that is to me, when I see these so-called influencers, which is still I still can't get my head around it. Uh, you know what I mean? But when I find out, oh, this person's making $30,000 a month or $50,000 a month or whatever crazy amount they're making per month, and I'll look at some of the content and I'm like, I wouldn't watch this. I'm old
I
school
don't get it,
though,
but it's clearly doing well.
but yeah, so but I have thought, okay, well, I mean, I would never be an influencer or even attempt to unless it was like a total farcical comedic version of one, taking the piss out of it. But I have thought, okay, well, what potentially could I put together that could fit in that sort of world that might be
How can
able
you adapt?
how could I adapt to something like
Mm.
that? I haven't come up with anything quite yet, because I just enjoy, the filmmaking side of things so much better. But series, that kind of stuff, some type of series thing could fit in that mold. I haven't quite figured out. In fact, I have a meeting today, later today, with that guy I was talking about, Dimitri Gelfand, who does the vertical picture stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we've been talking quite a bit about about trying to figure something out together. Um,
Mm.
but it's got a it's oddly enough, it's about shtick. You know what I mean? So his most successful ones currently have been a vampire type one about these vampires and whatnot. Everybody loves vampires. And another one is a mob one about about the mob and sort of like, a Sopranos type of a thing,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
online platforming. And might as well just do vampire mobsters.
Yeah, yeah. Combine. I was gonna say, like, I think there's untapped potential there. Maybe maybe there's a market that hasn't quite been figured out yet. But
Look, anything, well,
yeah.
I just realized anything that has to do with like the vampire thing and that whole world and that there's something that it's just attractive to an audience. They'll give it a chance. That because there's just
Mm.
such a big market for that, and now also with the ability to kind of do some of your own special effects and everything with some of the apps that are available for post-production it's pretty impressive what can be done nowadays literally with people just volunteering and like I said if for whatever reason it goes viral and you start making money I mean 30 40 grand a month that's more than enough to pay your crew and your talent you know what I mean
Oh yeah,
and still
yeah.
have enough to survive on.
Trust me, the people in my films that kill for that sort of pay, they only get there's only one of them that gets paid, and he gets a sausage roll for every film. So it's like, hey, listen, that sort of money goes a long way, like you say. So. You've given some absolutely fantastic advice to students and, sort of your own insight into the wider industry there. But I'm curious, when I want to relate this a little bit to Stargate, because that was obviously one of your earliest and most well-known projects. When you're provided like the outline for a project that you're going to be working on, what what do you sort of look at to say, okay, this is what's making me want to be a part of this? Is there something that you look out for in each project? And also, what was the casting process like? How do you approach things like that?
Yeah, honestly, I kind of went to the Michael Caine School of Acting. If you get a job offered to you and you feel like you can do something with it, take it. You know, uh,
Yeah, it's
it,
a paycheck, isn't it, at the end of the day?
it's and it's an opportunity like my teacher Manu always taught was that you can't go around life telling people that you're an actor if you're not acting. That in reality, the only time that you can ever claim to be an actor is when you're in the process of rehearsing a role, doing research for a role, or being on stage or on set performing the role. Those are the only times in reality when you're engaged in the art of acting. So if you're out at the coffee shop and and you're telling, oh yeah, I'm an actor, well, what was the last project you worked on? Oh, I did a play about 6 months ago. Well, you're not. That's not being an actor, and also you're not really being an actor there in the coffee shop unless you're like full on in character. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Performing a role, you're somebody who's in a coffee shop drinking coffee or reading a book or whatever. So you're a reader or you're a coffee drinker or so his whole point was don't get caught up in this delusional state of mind of if thinking that you're something that you're not unless you're doing it, and then that should hopefully drive you to do that more. So as far as Stargate goes, the opportunity to be in a show like that number one, I was a huge fan of the original movie when it came out, and I had never seen the series when it aired because it was on Showtime, and I didn't really watch TV much back then. I watch far more TV now than I ever have in my life, but it was on Showtime, which was a cable station, and I didn't have that particular cable station. I don't even know what cable stations I had. That's how little television I watched. But my mom had cable, so I was only familiar with the success of the TV show because around Los Angeles, every new season, when a new season was airing for Stargate, there would be the posters on the side of the buses and the all the advertising around town and billboards and I was like, wow, that's not cheap to, you know, to get
No,
major
no.
billboards and buses and all that, especially in Los Angeles. And I'm sure that they were doing that in many markets all across the U.S., not just that one. And so I understood, wow, this is like a really, really big series. There's a lot of money behind this. It must be successful. And and so when this show moved from Showtime to Sci-Fi Channel, I actually was over at MGM. There, they don't have studios anymore, but I was at MGM corporate offices, and I was auditioning for something. I don't even remember what it was, something totally different, not Stargate related at all. And I was just working on my material outside in this kind of quad area. And the casting directors for Stargate were walking by, going to get some coffee. They had a little cafe down there in their at their offices, and I had auditioned for them for other things in the past, nothing Stargate related, but just other things over the years because I've been acting since I was a kid. And they stopped and had a chat with me, and we had a great conversation. And it just so happened that they had just gotten the breakdown for the role of Jonas Quinn that morning, you know, and they were going to have to start casting for the character, like, you know, within the week or so. And because the character was appearing in the final season of the final episode of season 5, and then depending on
Mm.
how that went, was potentially going on as a series regular in season 6. So um, we just had a conversation about it. They were like, "Wow, we got this new character that came up," and blah blah blah. And my agent at the time sent my demo reel up to Canada, well, you know, which is where all the production offices were and all that, and over to MGM. And oddly enough, I didn't even have to audition for it, and I was like, "Thank God," because you know, auditions for me are always tricky. You know, it's
Mm.
when I get roles, I'm much more relaxed and, you know, and in present time. And you know, I would say that my willingness to audition, regardless of how much success I've had, has been a big factor in my continued working. But if I looked at how many auditions I've been on versus how many of those auditions have I actually landed the role, it's shocking how few
Yeah.
it really is. But but I work consistently because I maintain relationships with directors, with writers, with producers, and then I create my own content as well. But with Stargate, you know, they sent my stuff up there. You know, I was already somewhat well known within the television spectrum, and with some films that I had done already, and was so-called a teen heartthrob when I was younger, you know. So it was kind of, I mean, you know, I think they considered it smart casting at the time because I certainly had you know, somewhat of a following in life in the world, and was known to be a passionate and hopefully talented actor. And so I got the job offered to me, and I was extremely stressed out when I did my first episode because I'm like, wow, I mean, this could lead to being a series regular. You know, I got to like really, really like nail this character. But it was, they had me in this outfit that was really, really stiff. It was like this, you know, it was like this vest that I had to wear that made you like really super upright, and it was like kind of hard to move around in, and feel relaxed in. And they did my hair in a way that I wasn't totally stoked on. And you know, there was different elements of the character
Yeah.
when I was performing it where I was like, fuck. Oh, excuse my French. I was like, damn it.
Hey,
You know, it's like, you know, you know, I'm like, I hope this goes over well. I mean, I was having a good time with the cast and all of that, and I guess I did a good enough job, and got along with everybody well enough, and they brought me back as a series regular for all of 6 and part of 7, which, you know, was incredible time. I mean, it's still to this day, look, we're talking about it. And in reality, I
yeah.
wasn't in a whole lot of the series, but that season I did do, and the few episodes in season 7. But the season 6 was like some incredible, very memorable, very big episodes because it was the launch from Showtime to Sci-Fi Channel. So that season 6, they had to really go all out, and they had to really do some dynamic episodes with some really big set builds and great storylines. And I think that season 6 is one of the better seasons. I mean, I'm a little biased, but I think it's one of the better seasons of Stargate SG1 in terms of the production design, how big some of the episodes were, and how how much they effort they put into each of the episodes. I was blown away by it personally. I thought it was mind blowing that being on set was like being on an 80, $100 million feature film every day, you know?
Yeah, no, what an experience. No, absolutely. It's like I'm envious of a project like that. That sounds like insanely cool, to be honest. I mean, look, Corin, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I've had a list of questions here, but I think the conversation we've had has pretty much answered like everything I was going to ask anyway. Honestly, you've given an
I'm a
insane
mind
amount of
reader as
insight
well.
there. Yeah, yeah, there you go. Genuinely, you should read this list. It's like you've literally dot gone through it, and I've been like, you know what? Let's leave him to it. He's like giving us brilliant stuff here. But I mean, look, there's one thing I do want to ask just to wrap us up, and it's from your perspective of all the experience that you've had. What's one thing that you would like to see happen in the wider media industry going forward? If you could change one thing, if you could make a difference, what do you think should change?
That's a tough one. I mean, it's such a peculiar world right now with it. You know, there's so many platforms, so many streaming platforms. The advertising dollars are stretched so thin between all of these different platforms. The residual income is not nearly what it used to be. You can be on an extremely successful show on one of these platforms, and it'll be like the number one show on that platform, but yet you can go walk down the street and not a soul will know who the hell you are. It's a
No.
peculiar world right now in our industry. I don't know what I would really change. I mean, um, it is a blessing that there's so many more of these platforms available right now for jobs and for job opportunities for people in the industry. Um, but I think that the only thing I would want to look at is how is revenue shared between the platforms and the filmmakers, and how is that revenue
Mhm.
tracked? Right now, it's pretty much behind a curtain of mystery. There's no, it's very difficult to know what is anything making, in terms of the view counts. They don't share the view counts openly with you on these platforms as a filmmaker. So but it's similar to the music industry. They can disguise losses and profits behind the scenes. In the music industry, they could cover the losses on an album release with the gains on another album release, and then they do it was printing ads and all of this stuff, and they can mix and match this money, and then you don't know whether you're really getting your fair piece of the pie, or whether you really know how successful your show is. I mean, back in the day, I think that the residual income for being on a series was far more valuable than it is potentially today. But so I would probably, the only thing I would probably want to see changed is just the openness of the platforms to share what's going on behind the scenes with the different projects that are being viewed there, and how many views are they getting, and whatnot. So I think that's probably the only
Mm.
thing I would try to finagle, is a little bit
Yeah,
more openness.
fantastic. Yeah, that would be so helpful for all parties involved as well. I think, yeah, there's definitely too much of a closed door and that kind of thing. And again, that just leads to so much like unknown and mystery and speculation from everyone. And I just, surely it's easier to avoid that and not have just have the answers out there, for anyone to see. Surely that's just going to avoid all that yap that you hear online.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see if anything comes of that. But honestly, Corin, thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been an absolutely fantastic interview. Thank you for all your insight as well.
Yep.
Seriously, I really
My
hope everyone
pleasure.
from home takes something away. And yeah, thank you so much.
Cheers, mate. It's a pleasure.